I'm Tim Constantine from the Washington Times, and for America, he is David Bozell.
Timothy, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Joe Biden has been under question all year, certainly for several months, for some of us for several years, but as to whether or not he is firing on all cylinders.
Right.
He has stumbled on stage, he has stumbled verbally over and over, and in fairness, Joe Biden has been prone to verbal gaffes most of his career.
Right.
But it's different now. He appears to be stumbling like an old man as opposed to simply stumbling in speech. Robert Hur did the special counsel report that indicated he's got some serious problems. So we just had the State of the Union address. I described it when it started as there would be more viewers than ever before for the State of the Union for the same reason that people go to the Daytona 500. They might like racing and they might like politics, but they wonder if they're going to see a crash.
Right.
What did we see from Joe Biden during the State of the Union address?
You saw an old man yelling at 30 million people on national television and yelling at the Congress. If that's your cup of tea, it ain't mine, but if that's your cup of tea, then you really enjoyed that. I don't think any of us wakes up in the morning and say, where can I find an elderly gentleman to yell at me? But that's what he did for about 50 to 55 minutes. It's interesting, Tim. Usually after State of the Unions, you get a bump. And the press, particularly for a Democrat, will run to the front pages and tell everyone they know about the bump. And you haven't seen that. You haven't seen the Democrats touting post-State of the Union bump polls. So as much as the press tried very much to convince the American public that this was a feisty Joe Biden, he was on the mark. He was on his game. He showed energy, vigor. There was no bump for any of that.
What does it say?
Noticeably quiet.
What does it say about President Biden that the bar seemed to be, can he speak for an hour, rather than what's the content of what he's saying?
Well, the immediate react from most of liberal intelligentsia, it was that how great he did, because the bar is so low. It's impossible for him not to do well. What a terrible indictment on just his recent performances. He just said the other day that we have the lowest inflation rate of any country in America. That was the President of the United States of America.
That's
saying,
correct.
Okay.
That was true even when the inflation was 9%.
I don't know if he was trying to say county. I don't know if he was trying to say North America, South America, Americas. Who knows? And that's the issue. We've spoken about TikTok before, and that's the best platform for him because he can't really make a mistake, right? It keeps them at 10 seconds or less, and they can edit it 1,000 times.
I think the concern is, we all say things, we stumble sometimes. Barack Obama one time said something about the 57 states.
Right.
It sounded silly. It's a great little soundbite to pull out and make fun of. Barack Obama does not actually believe there are 57 states. Donald Trump has made errors saying different things along the way. The concern here is it has become accepted that Joe Biden will say something wrong literally every time he speaks.
Every time, yeah.
And I think that's the worry here is this isn't an occasional, oops, I didn't sleep more than 6 hours last night.
Right.
I'm tired. Sorry. Right. It's perpetual.
Right. And he can't go off script. Right, the one moment he did go off script during the State of the Union when he called the alleged murderer of Lincoln Riley an illegal immigrant. And then he said something that didn't get a lot of attention, was how many thousands have been killed by illegal immigrants, which I thought, well, that's the ad that should be run all day long. But obviously he fumbled whatever he was trying to say as well. Interestingly enough, the next day he calls up MSNBC and he says, I need a puff piece. So could you come interview me so I can retract the word illegal immigrant and call them undocumented? MSNBC obliges. By the way, that same reporter who did that interview was on Air Force One later that day. So he got the red carpet treatment for doing Joe Biden's dirty work there. Right. It's interesting. I think, to me, Tim, the election is all about really that discussion, right? If you believe that the millions that are crossing under Joe Biden's presidency are illegal, then your vote needs to be for Donald Trump. If you believe that the millions crossing under Joe Biden's presidency are undocumented, then your vote is going to be for Joe Biden.
Well, and I think it goes even a step further than that. The fact that we're talking about a young woman who was murdered,
Right.
and Joe Biden was more concerned about the terminology, legal or illegal, of the murderer
Right.
than he was about getting the young woman's name correct.
Right.
That speaks volumes to me.
Right. And couple that with, there's this book called White Rural Rage that's sort of all the rage in liberal intelligentsia, and it's just basically making the suggestion that white rural voters are the most COVID skeptics. They're the most racist. They're the most they're not just white nationalists. They're white Christian nationalists for real. And you couple that. There's an interview of this author went on MSNBC. A couple weeks ago, and Mika Brzezinski's just laughing it up, and all she could do is nod in approval. And yes, white people from small town America are terrible. And 2 days later, Lincoln Riley's memorial service takes place, and there's barely any mention of it. And this small town America, Athens, Georgia, gathered by the hundreds, if not thousands, to celebrate her spirit. No mention of it by the liberal media cohorts, none whatsoever. And it's just, that is sort of, we're living kind of two Americas right now, where you're either going to believe that all white people are racist, or you believe that Lincoln Riley deserved to live in the shining city on a hill. And she was murdered by essentially Joe Biden's turnstile border policies. And if you believe in the latter, then that's where I think Donald Trump has the edge, and I think that's where your vote needs to be.
There was a poll put out recently by Gallup that showed 73% of Democrats, not of all voters, not of Republicans, not of independents, of Democrats, don't think Joe Biden has the mental acuity to perform 4 more years of being president. How dangerous is that if you're part of the Biden campaign?
Well, I still think that Biden has the edge in the campaign because the country is not, while illegal immigration is the issue along with the economy, incumbents tend to get toppled when the country feels as if there was a major foreign military disaster. And if you equate the border crossings with a military disaster under Biden, then Trump, I think, has the edge. But I don't think the country is, and I'm talking about on par with Pearl Harbor, right? It just hasn't stung enough of the country yet. And those are one of the main keys that I'm looking at. But when you're talking about, Democrats think he's too old and too feeble and not with it enough to do the job. But I still think they're going to vote for him.
Dave Bozell, always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
For America, I'm Tim Constantine from the Washington Times. Thanks for joining us.